Hey, good morning and welcome to episode 6 of Soul of Travel. I'm so excited to be talking today with Lydia Dean with GoPhilanthropic and GoPhilanthropic Travel. And she's also the author of a book that I really love that is Jumping the Picket Fence, which I have next to me. And we are here today to dive into talking about global travel, philanthropy, and tying that into travel, and just exploring what happens when we kind of take the jump and live our passion and step out of maybe what we thought our path looked like, and to really honoring what it feels like and taking that unknown journey. So welcome. And Lydia, I would love for you to share with the people who are listening today a little bit about yourself and Go Philanthropic, and the background of what your company does and who you serve.
Well, thanks so very much for having me. I just love these opportunities to really kind of dive into some good meaty chats about the state of the world and ourselves and how we relate to that. So, gosh, the quick and dirty on me and the foundation and Go Phil Travel. Well, it starts quite a while ago when I was, had my first job, was just entering motherhood. So my kids were kind of young, living in the US. I'm now home based in the south of France. But at the time was in the US and really on a very kind of similar, typical track to what a lot of young women my age at the time were doing, and just working hard to build a secure life and to have a nice home and security. And we were self-employed. Everything was going just beautifully, and looking outside in, it was all a very pretty package, but it fell apart for me, and I hit a wall, and it was because I was not really living a life true to myself. I think I had acquired a life and built a life around what society told me I wanted, and I just cracked. So I started documenting my experiences because I didn't understand why my internal world was falling apart, and as a consequence my external world was too. I mean, things weren't right with my husband, and I wasn't happy at my job, and nothing was making me happy, and I would just had this outlet of writing it all down. So that became the sort of nuggets that ended up being Jumping the Picket Fence. And we had a picket fence, and the book is about jumping it, and that those leaps of faith that you have to take in order to find the path that's right for you. So we take a lot of twists and turns, and I had always had this kind of burning desire to be involved in world issues, and to for lack of a less cliche kind of phrase, I wanted to give back. And back then I was searching really to give back. I now see that in a different light, and I don't use the terms like that. But back then I did, and it was like this primal need to be connected to the work that needs to be done out there. And so I take a volunteer trip to years later to an orphanage in India, and had kind of a crappy experience, and came home feeling as though I didn't contribute anything. So like all, many good ideas, sometimes they start with what was wrong. And my experience, my first true give back experience in travel was really not productive for myself, nor did the children that I was looking to help benefit. So I ended up coming home and sort of chewing on how could we make this experience better. So that was sort of the idea from which Go Philanthropic Travel was born, and then later the foundation, because and maybe we can get into this in a little bit, but combining travel and giving back is a very, very complex affair, and there's a lot that goes into it. So we really found that we needed to focus on creating the careful systems that need to be in place in order to mitigate some of the unforeseen landmines that are out there when you put those two things together. So we now have Go Philanthropic Foundation that works directly with nonprofits, grassroots, community-led nonprofits around the world, and Go Philanthropic Travel that is sort of the car that brings people around to actually experience this firsthand and to learn firsthand what these wonderful programs are doing and why they need partnership.
I have like 30 things that I want to dive into from there because I'm so excited, which is what happened the last time we talked as well. But I think that just gave me such a perfect segue for what I wanted to read out of your book, because I felt it is a great topic to jump onto. So I'm just going to read here. Meanwhile, my mind went wild with the thoughts on the mission behind Go Philanthropic. The connection between travel and philanthropy was powerful and the potential limitless. I dreamed of dismantling the fences of fear people create that keep us from touching lives outside of what we know. Travel would provide people the opportunity to break down those superficial barriers, the picket fences that separate us as cultures and people. And I love that so much. I feel like that summarizes a little bit of everything of tying the two worlds together, which for me has been something that has always been a passion and a challenge, and helping people to cross that barrier between us is the reason for me why I created my company and why I feel like there is limitless potential, because of those connections are what are so powerful. And I also love, because I say this, so that's why I love it, but that you saw travel as the business, as the vehicle that could take people on this. And I always say this, I say travel is just this vehicle for connection and for the work that I want to do in the world. It's not necessarily the travel isn't the intention. It's just this process that gets us out there. So I would love to talk to you about that. Like, how did you blend those two together, or how did that land on you that this is the way that you wanted to proceed?
Well, I grew up in a family that that traveled quite a bit. I grew up in Canada. My parents were from England. So as a child, to go back and see my grandparents and my family and aunts and uncles and stuff, we had to travel. And my father traveled a lot for his work. He's a scientist. And so I feel like it was in our sort of family DNA to travel and explore. But, looking back, it's you're very wise in saying that it's just one way of doing this. The connection that ultimately happens and the contributing, to this greater whole, which is, I think, really what we're talking about, is making a contribution to humanity, can come in so many, many different forms. For me, I jumped on travel because it was something I knew I could do. It was a kind of a quick and easy way to get there, actually. I think it's harder if you take that piece out and you say, okay, contribute to humanity, and you're not going to buy your ticket to Cambodia or to Nepal or to Guatemala or to any of the places that we think need our help. That's another discussion. They certainly need attention and partnership, but there's a whole process that goes into that helping. So anyway, it's a quick way to jump to that spot where you feel you can be active and do something. But I think where we are today, actually, with everything that's happening right now and with this virus, is challenging that notion that we have to get on that plane to contribute to humanity. I think we are being challenged in that quick, get on the plane and go. So it's really given me a lot to think about in the past few weeks, because it makes us wonder, okay, if travel was the vehicle, is there just one? Is there just one vehicle that it, can take you to that place where you can feel that you're plugging into global issues and really making a difference? So.
Mm-hmm. That was something else that I was really thinking about, is talking about how do we still, in this space where we are now, and we don't know how long this will last, where we might not be able to be traveling to engage with communities this way and support them in this method that we've created, how do we still connect powerfully and create those relationships? And we also had talked about, and I think these go hand in hand, how do we access the space that occurs during that experience in our daily lives? And so I think, those are twofold, that if we can figure out how to pull some of that into our daily life, then maybe that impact still will resurface and ripple out. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, there's a lot in that, in those. That's like
I know.
a lot in those two questions. So let me go back to the first part of that. I think right off the bat, a lot of people might agree that while there was a lot of division in how different countries approached dealing with the virus and all that, but that in general it was very unifying. That it brought the world together, because it was something that happened to all of us, no matter where you are in the world, or with a business or no business, or an employee, or no matter what you're standing in the world, it affected each one of us. And this is that's quite something. So it's unifying. So where to start, I think, in that intention is that we care for one another, and opening oneself up to deeply caring about everyone, not just one place. And at the beginning it was China, and then it was Italy, and then it was France, and then we had this outpouring of just sort of, oh my gosh, deep care for all of these regions that were so affected. And then it creeps into your community, and gosh, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it, because it was such an overwhelming, I know for me, and what I saw in people around me, was just an opening up to an immense amount of care for everyone. And that is something that I know I have felt in bits and pieces in different places and times, but I've never felt it all at once, that this human family is a family. Mm-hmm. And when something happens, across the globe, we can feel it, over here. And it made, again, it made me question, if you can feel that, feel all of that energy from a distance, and all of that care and concern and desire to want to do what you can from locked inside your house, then do we again need to think about travel in the same way? We have to really, really think about what this experience is showing us. We've been trapped in our homes. Has that stopped us from thinking and feeling and doing and acting and evolving and hopefully transforming? I don't think so. I've seen more evidence of transformation in the past few months, being locked in our homes, than I have when we have every ability to, fly all over the place. So, therein lies maybe some of our answers.
Yeah. What was coming to me while you were thinking about that is kind of this flexing the muscle of compassion and connection in a gradual way. Like, first we had to think about this in China, but it still felt far away. So we were just easing into that moment. And then it started to feel more powerful as it crept into Europe. And we had to flex the muscle a lot more and find that compassion and that connection. And then it landed, here. And obviously you're in Europe, but in the US, and it really shifted. And that compassion became not only for our country, but then as we were locked in our homes, it became for ourselves. And so we had this great journey with compassion and self-compassion. And I think that is part of what we're feeling. And it might have been something a lot of people hadn't had the time and space for, or a way of tapping into it, because it's too overwhelming when you look at the whole world, right? And I think people like you and me, we see everything and we want to dive into every corner.
Mm.
And some people can't feel that because it's a lot and it's
Yep.
overwhelming and they don't know where to start. So they kind of just block it off. But the way this pandemic eased us into it, we kind of had this like slow path to open up to that. That's what I was just thinking of as we were talking. And I was like, wow, I keep looking for the gifts in this. And I think maybe that that could be one, because people are really, a lot of people are really reflecting, they're pausing, they're looking at being intentional with who they are when they go back out into the world. And I think as travelers, we're looking at who we are when we go back out into the world, and what the future of travel looks like, and the future of philanthropy and being engaged as global citizens. And so, I think that was a beautiful way to kind of, to look at that just landed on me. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And then I guess too, then thinking about, because we are feeling that energy and we're feeling that need to serve, and we're still looking for ways to do that. How do you foresee, because I know you're looking at this for Go Philanthropic and for your both your travel and your organization, of how do you think you might reimagine? And we don't know, it might be super possible in a year that things can operate, fairly close to what they were before, but do we want them to? And I know those are huge questions, but I'd love to dive in a little.
They are. And had this happened, say, 5 years ago, I think where I was in my mind, I might have jumped to trying to come up with what a good next step would be, in how to move forward through this, how to navigate this, what should we plan for? Do we start to plan trips for next year? What should we do? And it's funny because we've had this question come up several times in the past few weeks, like what is this going to look like, and how does this affect GoPhil travel, and how does this affect travel? And I'm actually really comfortable in the not knowing. I think what has happened to all of us is monumental. I think it's happening still. I think we are not in a place to plan and react just yet. I'm just not feeling as though that's where we should be right now. Still very much in this is where we are. And even as we open up and come out of our confinement, and we might, sooner rather than later have the ability to get things on the road per se again, I'm actually not feeling like it's the time to put those plans in place. I think there's still a lot of reflection that needs to happen. I think we need to go back to intention. And I know that our organization is rooted in support for people who do not have access to the very basics in life and who are fighting hard to get it. We've also learned some very big lessons in the past 10 years of doing this, that the answers to most of these issues do not lie outside of the communities themselves. They actually are not at a deficit, not the way we see it. They are full of resources in many ways, and that our support and partnership has really shifted over the years to be able to see that our work is actually in helping some of those assets that are already there be amplified and grow. Our job is not to bring them in from the outside. So the solution isn't the outside in. The care and compassion and the rolling up the sleeves and putting the mind around, pulling a chair up to the table and thinking about, what's going on, that's all needed. But the answers most likely are not from the outside. We're pretty sure that they're not, that they're already there, and that they need to be nurtured and fortified and strengthened. So maybe maybe this is time to just continue to look at how we can continue that kind of support without needing to physically go. I mean, that the Go Philanthropic travel, its real purpose has been to provide an educational context for donors and potential donors to understand what's happening around the world, because there's a lot of unintentional uninformed giving that has, you know, unintentional kind of harmful effects. And so we thought the way to counteract that was to root it in knowledge, and to bring people into regions and into the offices of fantastic programs and communities that had found solutions to their problems and were really working hard on doing more of that. And once we have a greater understanding of all of that context, be it, you know, economic or political or historical, our assumption that you know, writing a check and that we have an idea what we would write that check for and what might be good for them, it becomes rather, you know, comical, honestly. And it really helps you to realize on day one when you take these trips that, okay, you know, I think I understand why this is important. I think I understand why they're going about solving their problems in this way. And then you follow in that good thinking, and you want to support them to do more of what they're already doing for themselves. So I don't think this is a time to map out a plan. It just feels too soon. I think we have to work on ways to continue that support and care in other ways.
I love the imagery of, and I guess it's a cliche or whatever, but of pulling your seat up to the table. But to, I mean, that's what I found as I traveled. I of course, I had the notion that I carried with me of creating impact and what can I do and how easy is it to write a check and support all these endeavors. And then when I was really sitting and sharing space with women in a village in Africa and began to listen to what they actually asked for, was so different than what I assumed they needed. And so I love that on your journeys that allows people to connect with one another in that way. So I think that's really important. And I fully believe, and all of the communities that I visited in different places around the world in different levels of abundance and richness, and however you gauge that almost everywhere they were rich in what they could offer, and what they lacked we couldn't perceive, because we just have a different lens. And so those conversations I think are so important. And so I really love that way of thinking, and thinking about what it actually means to be philanthropic, and to give what is needed versus what is assumed. And I think that taps in a little bit to something that I would love to address to you, because I think it could really inform people who are listening about volunteer travel or philanthropic travel, this travel for good. Is there a way that we can ask the right questions to know what we are doing is good? From your experience, do you think there's the right way to have that conversation so people that don't know and haven't experienced this can know that they're going to get an experience that has a positive impact?
The first red flag would be if you're looking to jump in and do right off that. There's an experience of that without having learned anything first, that would be a red flag brought up that I think are really critical. And it goes back to listening and to seeing. And I think we're at a stage where we're looking at giving back and philanthropy and all of this, and with a new lens, with a much needed new lens. So it's almost like pulling the sock inside out. And in doing that, we can't just jump into the new paradigm. We just have to stop and be at that table and listen and see and attempt to see, just as you're saying, perhaps what we don't perceive easily. So it's, you know, in that moment where you want to do, where you just want to do because frankly, it feels good. You know, it feels really good to just muck in and do, and certainly do for someone or people that you feel need your help. That's the easiest, quickest thing to tell yourself that you're helping to fix it, and also it feels good. But the hardest lesson, I think, for us has been to do the absolute opposite. But in doing that, we've been able to ultimately provide more in that support, because in that listening and in that seeing, you're able to follow their own visions for themselves, and that's just the way that it needs to be. But traditional philanthropy and traditional giving back and traditional volunteer work, because there is some very, very good volunteer-based work out there that shouldn't be overlooked, but the short stint volunteer vacations that are very action-based and jump in without that, without that understanding first and listening first is, we don't want to sit and listen and do nothing first, but actually there's just so much in it. It's fundamental.
Yeah. And I don't want to discredit that there are many organizations doing it the
Many.
right way either, but I do know that some people come back and they feel like they feel that discomfort of maybe like, I'm not sure it either didn't make them feel good, or they aren't sure what they got involved in. And so I just want people to be conscious that there is maybe a conversation to be had when they're seeking those experiences, because they are very powerful. And so I want as many people as possible to be able to connect and to nurture that in themselves if that's what they're seeking, but just to know to maybe do it with their eyes open and not just
probably with
that action place.
You might have found with your journeys too that the most powerful thing that comes out of them is reflection. It's reflection, and that's not building the walls of a school, or painting a community center, or building a well. That reflection, I think, has a lot more power to it than the muscle you put into to building a wall that, frankly, feels good when you're building your own wall, and we're taking something away from a community and not doing that themselves. So I think that reflection and what happens internally, that transformation that makes us see the world in a different way, goes a lot further than some of the short-term actions that can feel better in the moment, or feel fun, or feel kind of, what's the word, fulfilling. Mm-hmm. But they're fulfilling to us. Are we really thinking about whether or not we're benefiting, whether or not we are truly contributing, or are we feeling good in the moment? So those are, difficult questions to ask, especially when you're driven by this desire to want to do some good. So when people ask us, we want to go out there and do good, and we want to travel and do good, what's the very first thing I should do? And I always get pushback for this answer, because it's such a kind of like a Debbie Downer answer, but I still stand by it. I think we need to ask ourselves first, why? What's going on with us internally, where we feel this need to serve or to give back, or where is it coming from? Is it coming from a place of fullness, and your cup is just full, and you're ready, and you have space in your life, and you just feel full of you just want to share what you have? Or is it because you might not feel fulfilled, and in order to fill that, whatever that void is, you might be drawn to want to give back, or do something that feels good? And the very important questions to ask.
I love that. Yeah. That's what I was thinking when you were talking, is just like, what is it that they are desiring? And with a Sojourn experience, for me, that's even though it might not be centered necessarily around philanthropy, but I asked the travelers, what is it that you're seeking in this experience? What are you looking for? And part of that is then to set your intention, but part of it is to know what you're actually looking for. And a lot of times people just feel that call and that urge and that hole, and they just start seeking and they start putting stuff in there. Um, and still, I think that's okay if you know that's what you're doing. But it's just that moment of reflection, and then having the experience, and then the reflection afterward too. I think is what is profound about travel, is that the journey isn't when you get on the airplane and then when you get off the airplane. The journey is like what led you there in the first place and what happens when you get home. And
So very, very true. I couldn't agree with you more that sometimes the before and the after have the greatest impact. Yeah, and it's in the after that we come back and we say, at times I don't want to accept the way I was living before. I don't want to accept the glasses and the lens that I, was seeing my life through. I want to make changes. And we've always been so grateful for our growing community of people who have stayed in our quote family. But if people come back from a trip and decide they want to jump into what's happening in their own neighborhoods, that's success. When you're a part of when you're a part of change, when you're part of offering an experience that helps to kind of move somebody through to a place where they can open up and make changes in their lives. That's a beautiful thing.
yeah. I also was just thinking that often it seems like when people start seeking, they reach really far. And we do look at going, like we think, oh, we're going to take this trip to Africa or Central America or South America and have this powerful transformational experience and serve the world. But I also think that when you come back and you reflect, then it opens you up to, like you were saying, like, how can I serve those around me too? It just kind of shifts. I think we think it has to be grand. We don't think we can start small. And I love that in your book too, you said small personal actions can make a difference. And I think that's, I don't know if it's human nature, but we have to do the big grand thing before we can figure out we can do the little thing.
Go big or go home. It's
Right.
always been ground into us since day one. But I think that when we think of travel, and especially like far travel, you get this kind of giddy feeling. Wow, this giddy travel thing that you get, and I think a lot of people would agree that when you travel, you're a little more relaxed, you're a little more you're a little less whoever you are at home, maybe more open to new experiences. Maybe you'll try things that you wouldn't when you're at home. So net sum, I think we're more vulnerable when we travel, and we're okay with that vulnerability. We allow that vulnerability, and that tells me that we're turning something off at home. We're turning off that vulnerability at home. We're frightened of it. That is like, let's just turn that off. And, we need to ask ourselves why we do that, because I believe in Picket Fence, there were some kind of very personal moments that were shared. And I, took a deep breath before publishing it, because I'm thinking, why would I want to show sort of that not so great side of myself or whatever? But in those moments of vulnerability, I mean, I think that's when we figure stuff out. I really do. But we run for the hills when it comes to vulnerability. And it's just it's easy to get it and feel good about it when we travel. And I probably think that the work that needs to be done is at home, getting that giddy at home and doing stuff at home and opening up at home. But we don't.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, now for the next 4 hours of this conversation. But I mean, for me, that is what travel is accessing that place of vulnerability. And it's magic, and it is so crazy, especially if you're traveling alone, even within a group. You give yourself permission to be yourself. And
Totally.
And if you're traveling from a city to a city, you can reinvent yourself. Every time you land, you get to be like, here I'm the person who loves spicy food. Here I'm the person who loves to dance. Here I'm the person who only reads books. And you get to try on all these different personas and truths about yourself that you don't when you're at home and you are in your container and you're following your rules. Or so I think that is why I'm so excited about using travel as a tool for transformation and then bringing that back into your real life. And also with the vulnerability piece, this for me has been something that I have really been working on. And I found myself for quite some time, I feel like it's been 6 or 7 years, that when I would first see people being vulnerable, it was, what is that? Oh my gosh, are they crazy? Are they okay? What are they doing? Do they know they're letting every person see their truth right now? They're supposed to keep that hidden. And to this point now where I have realized that your truth shines the light on my truth, and your words help me find my words. And like, we have to do it. And I think travel also helps us with that, because we have those real conversations, and we have conversations, and especially in my path, with women around the world who speak the same language, and it awakens something in us. And for them, they see us sharing in a way maybe that's not culturally acceptable, and they think, this was inside my head, but it never could come off my lips. And they realize it can, and it's just so powerful. And I think that the giving doesn't even have to be monetary. Like, that's a huge gift to create that awareness and that connection, and makes that accessible for people at all levels. You don't have to be someone who's a millionaire who can go out and do this work. You can just be someone who has an open heart and is ready to connect, and that small action will create the difference. So.
Oh yeah, yeah, really, really beautifully put. It begins with the vulnerability, which allows us, those walls come down that allow us to then connect, and for whatever is held in our heart flows more easily. We connect on a different, more powerful level with the people around us, be it in our traveling group or the people that we're meeting. And stuff flows from that. And it's we're talking beyond philanthropy, that whatever is flowing is good. And we need a lot more of it in our world. When we've got it all inside of us, we just have a ton of walls up and a ton of fences. And the more we can get to a place where we live from that spot, which is, it is vulnerable. A lot comes from it. And resources, financial resources, is just, I think, just one way that we can reflect that love. Philanthropy comes in so many forms. I mean, the definition is caring for humanity. That's not going to come in just one shape and size. It's certainly not going to come in an amount. It's going to come, care comes in a million ways. So I just see that as one currency of something much greater and much more powerful. So yeah, what a great topic.
I'm like, I don't think there's anything left to say. That was just, I feel like we hit into something so beautiful, and where our souls are really aligned in how we see the world and how we see people to be able to interact in that way. I actually am going to go ahead and just give you the space if there's anything else that you wanted to share, and then also to let listeners know how they can support, especially your Go Philanthropic organization, the efforts. I know you're doing a lot of work right now, and I would just love for you to share how people can learn about that and support those.
Sure. So there are two entities. Go Philanthropic Foundation has the partnerships with around 30 or so grassroots programs working on education, health, human rights issues, some really difficult and complex issues. They're small organizations, but they're driving big change and doing a lot of the heavy lifting out there that without a whole lot of visibility to sort of the international global platform. So it's important stuff. We've been doing virtual Zooms, so they've had the ability to kind of describe how all of this is affecting them, and we hope that's going to continue, because that's really opened up a door for us to really think about, well, how can we bring their voice directly to anybody who wants to listen. And so that's been great for us. So you can sign up for any of our news. We have loads of information that comes out, and this is just news, real news from the front line. So that's GoPhilanthropicFoundation.org, and GoPhilanthropicTravel.com is the travel side. And yeah, I think we're just going to need to watch that space. I mean, we're not going to be staying at home forever, that's for sure. But I think that we'll be looking at travel in a different way, and how and when that happens, we don't know. But it's for sure going to reemerge. It will just need to be looked at in a mindful way. So, and Jumping the Picket Fence can be found on Amazon. And yeah, we just encourage anybody to connect. It's a great way to know that each one of us can make a difference. And again, it comes in so many different ways, and yeah, open doors.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is, I expected nothing less, but it still surpassed what I envisioned in sharing. So thank you.
Great conversation, great questions. And yeah, sometimes we don't have all the answers, that's for sure. I don't know that we came up with any, but maybe that's what's needed right now.
Yeah, I think just figuring out how to ask the questions that need to be asked, then, I mean, there's no way to find the answers until we know the questions. So yeah. I think that's an important part of the process. So thank you so much for sharing that space with me.
You're so welcome. Thank you.